Among the old maps of the Appalachians, tucked away in a dusty drawer of the Jackson County archives, there lies a note that had gone unnoticed for decades. A single paragraph, handwritten in 1887 by the county surveyor. The Denvers refused the census. The house is not subject to inventory. I do not recommend sending people there without extreme necessity. This phrase was the first thread in a chain of events that would lead us to one of the strangest and most disturbing discoveries in the history of rural America. A story where doubts about common sense arose long before the first clues. The Denver family appeared in the county registry in 1851. Edgar and Sybil, a married couple who bought a small plot in a mountain valley for a pittance. No friends, no relatives, no papers about their past. They built the house with their own hands and never mingled with others. They showed no interest in elections, taxes, schools, or church. Locals called them strange but peaceful. Occasionally, a woman descended from the hills to buy salt or bandages. It was said that she always paid with gold coins, which hadn't been seen in the area since colonial times. Rumors circulated. They had a dozen children. They were digging for something in the earth, and hunting in their forest was forbidden. Dogs and horses were said to disappear there. In 1873, 2 postal inspectors vanished in the county. The last place they were seen was the trail leading toward the Denvers' land. The search yielded nothing. The official report stated dryly, "Disappeared in difficult terrain." The family was never listed in another census. However, no bodies, no graves, not even scraps of clothing were ever found. The house stood, gray, lifeless, yet smoke rose regularly from its chimney. In 1892, another disappearance was recorded, that of the surveyor who wrote the original note. His horse returned to town alone. Over time, the Denvers were forgotten. Their land was declared ownerless. In 1904, 3 hunters stumbled upon it. The house had already collapsed. They swore they found a child's skull in the basement and chain marks on the walls, but the official report stated, "Ruins, no interest." No one approached the site for decades until 2023. During wildfires, drones from a University of Tennessee research team detected an anomaly. Beneath the scorched earth, thermal imaging revealed a structure, a tunnel descending underground with voids mapped within. The location matched the Denver farm. This discovery sparked a new investigation. A team of archaeologists descended into the tunnel 3 weeks later and found something for which neither science nor history was prepared. Evidence of genetic experiments, medical procedures incompatible with the scientific knowledge of the late 19th century. Schematics, inscriptions, and, most hauntingly, remains. But before delving into the find itself, one question must be answered. Who were Edgar and Sybil Denver? Why did they hide from the world? And what exactly were they trying to preserve in their children? When the archaeologists first entered the underground tunnel beneath the Denver property, they expected to find the remains of an old storage shed, or, at best, a wine cellar. But beneath layers of earth, ash, and stones lay an entire system of chambers, constructed with a precision and calculation that far exceeded the technological capabilities of mountain farms of that era. The ceilings were lined with metal plates, and the walls were covered with strange markings, as if someone had spent years carving symbols resembling chemical formulas or a primitive cipher. At a depth of 6 meters, they discovered the first room. Inside were 3 wooden beds, massive and crude, yet with polished surfaces, as if someone had lain on them for a very long time. Nearby hung iron hooks on chains, embedded deep in the stone masonry. There was no trace of blood, but one chain remained taut, as though it had held something captive until the very last moment. On the floor lay fragments of clothing, a woolen child stocking, a torn piece of an apron, buttons. The most significant discovery was a metal box, hermetically sealed, heavily charred on the outside, but preserving papers inside. Initially, the researchers assumed it was a personal archive. Blueprints, diagrams, drawings of human organs, annotated in a strange blend of Latin and English. One sheet stood out particularly. It depicted the silhouette of an infant with unnaturally elongated limbs, with a caption beneath. Series D, Specimen Number 5, prematurely activated. The documents were sent for decoding. The initial analysis revealed that these were not simply medical records, but a systematic body of work on adaptive breeding, a term not used until the 1960s. Yet these records dated no later than 1880. By this point, it became clear that the underground level of the Denver farm was not a refuge or storage space, but a laboratory. Homemade, crude, but functional. And if the papers were to be believed, experiments had been conducted on children, possibly the Denver zone. Samples were taken from the walls, floor, and ceiling. The soil contained traces of phenol and formalin, chemicals used in embalming and antiseptics. One of the bricks was hollow. Inside was a glass vial containing a murky liquid and a fragment of dried flesh. Analysis revealed a rare DNA mutation characteristic of individuals born without the ability to feel pain. The most disturbing conclusion concerned the age of the samples. According to independent laboratories, some of the tissues were biologically fresh. They should not have survived more than 20 years under such conditions. Yet they did. How remained unclear. All these facts raised more questions than answers. Who were these children? Were they connected to the Denvers themselves? And most importantly, was anyone still alive? The answer came unexpectedly, thanks to a photograph found in a private museum collection in Ohio. It showed a fair in 1896. In the background, among the crowd, stood a man and a woman. The caption read, "Visitors from Appalachia." Their faces matched known sketches of Edgar and Sybil. Between them was a girl about 12 years old. She looked directly at the camera, her expression later described by researchers as disproportionately aware. A photograph from the 1896 fair became the first public record of someone allegedly connected to the Denvers. The girl positioned between Edgar and Sybil, identified by a museum tag as Livy, appeared about 12 years old at the time the photo was taken. Her gaze stood out from the rest of the scene. Amidst blurred silhouettes and indistinct features, her face was strikingly sharp, as if captured separately. This anomaly raised questions. Was a different photographic technique used? Or was there something unusual about the image itself? Yet, more significant than the photograph itself was where it was found, in the archives of a private collector from Cincinnati named Randolph Crow. His collection had been closed after his death in 1982, but was reopened for researchers by a museum. Among relics of the Victorian era, 2 more items linked to Livy surfaced. The first was a diary in French, fragmentary and missing its cover. It presumably belonged to a governess named Eugénie Duval, who came to the United States from Lille in 1893. She wrote about an unusual girl who never seemed to tire, capable of standing motionless in the dark for hours on end. According to the governess, the girl had one peculiar trait. She spoke only in whispers and appeared to understand Latin, despite never having studied it. The second document was a payroll record from 1897, listing expenses on equipment, strange for a farm. Surgical instruments, glass vessels, extracts of arsenic and belladonna, and a preparation called sea clay extract, a term not found in any pharmacopoeia of the era. The order was placed under the name E. Denver. At this point, the investigation took a new direction. Whereas before it had been thought that Denvers might be isolated lunatics with paranoia, it now became clear they were engaged in a methodical activity, perhaps not alone. Experts began cross-referencing reports of children exhibiting unusual behavior in Monroe County and surrounding areas. One such case was the disappearance of 3 students from a church school in 1895. All 3, boys aged 10 to 13, vanished after Mass. The school was located just 40 miles from the Denver farm. No bodies, no traces were ever found. The only clue left behind were scribbles on a bench discovered a week later. Livy came. We went down with her. Some locals claimed the girl appeared later at the edges of villages. She was seen near wells, along forest trails, and even by an old hospital closed after a typhus epidemic. No one could catch or interrogate her. She seemed unaffected by time, fear, or age. Those who tried to approach her would faint, lose consciousness, or later develop stuttering. Following the publication of these details in a local newspaper, the editorial archives received a letter signed only with the initials MR. It contained a few cryptic lines. Livy is not a child, and the Denvers are not her parents. They are her creators, or guardians, and she is not finished with what she started. From this point, Livy became the central figure of the investigation. To understand her nature, researchers went to the one place where she was reportedly seen longest, the Fort Barrow Psychiatric Asylum. According to unconfirmed reports, she was brought there in 1898. And it was there that the most inexplicable events in the county's history began. Fort Barrow Psychiatric Asylum, founded in 1852 deep in the heart of Iowa, was known for its strict regime and complete isolation. Initially established for military veterans suffering from severe psychological trauma, by the late 1880s, it began admitting civilians as well. Among its patients were religious fanatics, women diagnosed with hysteria, and those whom the era simply labeled as incomprehensible. Formally, the name Livy does not appear in Fort Barrow's records. However, the admissions ledger from 1898 includes a mysterious entry, a patient listed only as LV, age undetermined. Reason for hospitalization: incongruity of speech and behavioral patterns, not subject to classification. Within the first week of LV's arrival, the institution recorded 2 serious incidents. 3 patients experienced sudden, unexplained deterioration in mental and physical health. 1 died of cardiac arrest, despite having no prior heart condition. Meanwhile, medical staff began reporting insomnia, hallucinations, and a disturbing sensation of constantly being watched. Chief Physician Edmund Barlow noted in his report, "LV was calm, almost entirely motionless, but the building seemed to change upon her arrival. Footsteps echoed down empty halls. Doors opened on their own. Patients began speaking in dead languages they had no way of knowing." Within 2 months, the hospital began to lose staff en masse. One nurse reported hearing a voice each night urging her to burn the ward. Another orderly claimed a girl with hollow eyes came to him in dreams, whispering, "Unbind me." The most bizarre case involved a young doctor named Randall Crean, who left behind 20 handwritten pages, discovered after his sudden disappearance. In them, he described patient LV as biologically stable, but experientially absent. Crean claimed he had not seen her blink even once in over 3 weeks. He also made one of the investigation's most disturbing observations. She does not breathe like others. There is no rhythm. One moment, her chest is completely still. The next, a rapid series of contractions, as if something inside her is waking up. On August 28, 1898, Fort Barrow went up in flames. The fire originated in the southern wing, where LV's room was located. 17 people perished, including patients and 2 guards. The cause of the fire was never determined. At the site of the blaze, investigators found a charred bed frame, but no body. No biological remains believed to belong to LV were ever discovered. Official reports state that the patient was evacuated, but later died of injuries. However, the medical discharge file contains no death date. Even more puzzling, 6 years later, in 1904, someone identified again as LV appears in the records of a private clinic in Massachusetts. Once again, no full name, no confirmed age, and the exact same symptoms. This raises the inevitable question: could LV have been Livy? And if so, who or what was she? On the surface, the Denver family always appeared respectable. Henry Denver, a veteran of the Civil War, later became a pharmacist and a well-regarded citizen of Buchanan County, Missouri. His wife, Agnes, originally from Boston, came from a deeply religious family rooted in Puritan traditions. They had no children of their own, and when Livy appeared, she was seen by neighbors and acquaintances as a long-awaited blessing after years of fruitless attempts to conceive. But when researchers began reconstructing the family archive, certain discoveries emerged, details that fit no known version of their official biography. The first troubling revelation was the discovery of a handwritten book, found in 1941 in the attic of the now-abandoned Denver house. It remained in a private collection until the 1970s, then disappeared, only for its digitized pages to resurface in a private archive database in 2022. The book had no title. On the first page was a symbol, a tangle of eyes encircled by what appeared to be Sumerian ideograms. The contents were a mix of ritual descriptions, procedural instructions, and personal notes. One figure recurred throughout. The third, described as without memory but with inheritance, and embedded in flesh but rejected by spirit. One ritual, in particular, was documented in unsettling detail. It was to be performed on a child under the age of 7 and required 7 days of fasting, a circle of mirrors, animal blood, and absolute silence from all participants. The stated goal: to open the gates into another mind. At the bottom of the page was a signature: A.D. Could these be the initials of Agnes Denver? Further examination of local archives revealed another deeply buried fact. In 1893, the Denvers had already adopted a daughter, a girl named Elaine, taken from an orphanage in St. Louis. Just 1 year later, she disappeared. A brief column in a regional newspaper referenced the loss of a child under unknown circumstances. No investigation followed. When journalists in the 1970s tried to dig deeper into the Denvers' history, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. Almost all documents relating to the family between 1890 and 1900 were either missing or partially burned. Medical records, tax receipts, even the 1897 census of Buchanan County, all gone. One of the few surviving artifacts is a photograph dated 1895. It shows 3 figures: Henry, Agnes, and a young girl, perhaps 8 years old. Her face appears blurry, as if the camera refused to focus on her. On the back, scrawled in charcoal, "The second did not endure. The third will be the last." If Elaine was the second and Livy the third, then the obvious question is, what happened to the first? No definitive answer has yet been found, but what is increasingly clear is that the story of the Denver family is not just one of eerie events or tragic misfortune. It points to a deliberate, systematic participation in something far beyond faith, science, or morality. Their goal may have been to create a vessel, or perhaps transfer a consciousness, or maybe something even older. Livy Denver disappeared in the fall of 1901. She was 13. Officially, she drowned in the river. The body was never recovered. The case was closed swiftly, and no one in the town seemed inclined to question it. It was as if the community itself was eager to forget she had ever existed. But over a century later, in 2018, a forgotten patient file was uncovered in the archives of Maple Hollow Psychiatric Hospital, located nearly 200 kilometers from Buchanan. The file was stored in a section labeled Unidentified Individuals, and it bore no name, only the initials LD and a date of admission, November 3, 1901. Exactly 3 days after Livy's presumed death. The document describes the arrival of a female adolescent, estimated age 12 to 14, brought in by a group of farmers who found her at night inside an abandoned grain silo. Her body showed multiple wounds, burned scars, and signs of severe malnutrition. She could not speak. She did not respond to her name. Her eyes were fixed on a single point, unmoving. The attending physicians noted that while she posed no physical threat, she exhibited extreme psychological instability. Over the next 14 years, the girl referred to as LD remained in Maple Hollow's locked ward. Staff attempted to rehabilitate her, to teach her language, social behavior, memory recovery. All efforts failed. The only consistent behavior she displayed was drawing, on walls, on bed sheets, on her own skin. Always the same pattern. A circle containing 3 human figures with a symbol between them, a single eye, cracked through like glass. The drawings would reappear again and again, no matter how often she was restrained, sedated, or placed in isolation. In 1915, under unexplained circumstances, LD vanished. No records of discharge, no signs of escape, no staff recollection. She simply ceased to be. That could have been the end of the story. But in 2022, independent researcher Jordan Fisher, studying the origins of family cults in the American Midwest, discovered troubling links between 19th century adoptive families and obscure esoteric practices, some dating back to pre-Christian belief systems. These rituals often involved soul transference, sacrificial rites, and the preservation of ancestral memory. According to Fisher's theory, certain families had tried to create what he called a container, a human vessel capable of housing an external consciousness or knowledge without destroying the host identity. These attempts were masked as adoptions, medical care, or even religious upbringing. As part of his research, Fisher examined old church records from Buchanan and made a startling discovery. In 1882, 13 years before the adoption of their first known daughter, Elaine, a baby named Livy Denver was baptized at the Church of St. Lazarus. This meant that the name, Livy, existed in the Denver family long before she was supposedly brought in from the orphanage. More disturbingly, the name reappeared. This supported a deeper hypothesis. Livy was not just any girl, but rather the third attempt to implant something, a name, a consciousness, an essence, into a new vessel. And each adoption had been nothing more than a disguised ritual. Confirmation came from an unexpected source. A vacated safety deposit box in Kansas City was opened during a digital archiving project. Among mundane contents was a glass jar of human baby teeth, labeled The Third, Year 3. Alongside it, a journal bound in skin. Inside the journal, neatly handwritten notes documented behaviors, dates, symptoms, responses to rites, annotations to something called the Elder Source, and references to a circle configuration. One of the final entries read, "The container has begun to resist. The separation is unstable. The eye within her is open, but does not look here. If the third fails, there will be a final." The final. This echoes the chilling message found on the back of the old family photograph. The second did not endure. The third will be the last. It's now evident that for at least 20 years, the Denver family engaged in a deliberate sequence of rituals, each involving a child, each one a sacrificial vessel in a repeated rite of transference. This was not religious devotion. It was methodical, calculated, cold. Only one question remains. Why? After analyzing the documents recovered from the safety deposit box in Kansas City, it became clear that the ritual imposed upon the Denver family's adopted children was neither spontaneous nor experimental. Instead, it followed a precise structure, symbolic, numerical, and even geographic in nature. Jordan Fisher, the independent researcher studying Midwestern family cults, uncovered striking correlations between the dates when children disappeared from orphanages and schools across Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa, and the religious dates recorded in the so-called Calendar of Eyes. This text, allegedly transcribed from a charred manuscript discovered in Vermont in 1864, detailed cycles of invasions, specific days when the boundary between worlds supposedly grew thinner. The year 1897 stood out as particularly disturbing. According to archival newspaper reports, more than 17 children, all between the ages of 9 and 13, vanished from orphanages within a 300-mile radius of Buchanan, Missouri. None were ever found. Official explanations ranged from illnesses to fires, and even runaway cases. However, no bodies were recovered, no evidence left behind, no witnesses came forward. No criminal investigations were ever launched. By the turn of the century, these disappearances ceased to be random. They became ritualized. At the Chicago clinic where Dr. Gerard Alton worked in 1902, a private diary was discovered that mentioned strange people from Iowa bringing children who cannot be sedated and pleading for assistance in conducting procedures involving galvanic helmets. One preserved entry read, "They claim the child hasn't fully opened. They speak of redirecting into a body. They inquire about procedures to release the second sight." No names were given, but the clinic's visitor logs from that period include a couple, Adam and Elaine Denver. Meanwhile, in the surrounding counties, documents began to surface describing bizarre ritual schools, funded through private donations. Officially, these were schools for troubled children. In reality, they operated as isolated institutions, without any government licenses. Several such schools were shuttered in 1910, officially for illegal confinement of minors. Yet, no criminal charges were ever filed. All of this points to one conclusion. The Denver family was not alone. They were part of something much larger, a hidden community operating covertly across decades, perhaps even centuries. They had a system, a language, a set of symbols, and an underlying structure. Their goal was transmission, or perhaps extraction, not of a person, but of an essence. The most chilling discovery came with the decoding of pages from the leather-bound journal found alongside the teeth. On one of the last pages was a diagram. At the center, a circle. Around its edges, symbols representing water, ash, salt, and tooth. Beneath the diagram, a caption. Into the vessel enter three. One speaks, one watches, one remembers. The one who remembers will be the last. When recalling the diary of the Denver family's first adopted daughter, Elaine, a particular entry stands out. They told me I must remember. I must be the one who does not forget. If all three children, Elaine, Martha, and Livy, were prepared for distinct roles, it implies the ritual was completed. But this raises a profound question. What exactly was transferred? And where did those who performed this ritual disappear to? In late 2023, historian Jessica Hull, who had been investigating the Denver family case, traveled to the regional archives of the state of Kansas. While combing through old cadastral documents, she uncovered a land registration dated 1876, marking ownership of a parcel in the southeastern part of the state. The owner, Adam Denver. Alongside the land registration was a note about a structure listed as non-residential, religious in nature. No photographs of the building survived, but the archive description was unsettling. A one-story construction made from black wood, without windows, and a single north-facing door. Locals at the time reportedly called it the House of the Listening One, a place where silent services were held, during which speaking the name of God was strictly forbidden. According to tax records, the Denver family continued to pay property taxes on this land until 1964, long after all its known members were either deceased or officially missing. Following the coordinates deep into an overgrown and abandoned forest lot, Jessica and a team of volunteers found the site. Most of the structure was gone. Only the decayed foundation remained, but partially concealed beneath the earth, disguised as a waste pit. They discovered an entrance to what turned out to be a subterranean chamber. Inside, time had taken its toll, but remnants of the original ritual space remained. The walls were etched with symbols, a mix of runes, numeric sequences, and what appeared to be coded writing. Nearly all matched entries from Elaine Denver's diary, the photographic tiles from the 1900s archive, and even the scratches on the walls of Devin Greeley's apartment. But the most disturbing element was the central wall. It was inlaid with teeth, hundreds of them, both child and adult, arranged in patterns, each accompanied by a small etched inscription, initials, dates, and a single-word designation. Remembers, speaks, carries, saw. It became painfully clear. This place was the heart of the ritual around which the life of the Denver family revolved. Papers hidden in a compartment beneath the wall revealed what had taken place here. Family members were brought from multiple states to this location. Here, they underwent something referred to in the documents as the memory census. Each participant was given a small nameplate. Then, one tooth was extracted, an act described as the seal that binds the voice to the flesh. But the most terrifying artifact lay at the center of the underground room, inside a stone sarcophagus. It held a charred doll, stuffed with what later analysis revealed to be human hair. A wooden plaque beneath it bore a name: Elaine Denver. Elaine was not merely a participant. She had become a symbol, or perhaps something more, a keeper of the rite, a vessel. Additional documents found at the site made another detail painfully clear. The ritual was not a one-time event. It was cyclical. It was performed every 33 years. The last recorded event, 1990, the next predicted date. 2023, Jessica realized, with growing dread, that Devin Greeley's death was no coincidence. It was part of a sequence, a reawakening of the rite. In her private notes, she wrote a chilling observation. If I'm right, someone alive right now is carrying not just memories, but something more. He is the vessel, and it won't stop until the vessel is full. Everything she uncovered pointed toward one conclusion. The ritual never ended. It simply changed form. From darkness, it moved into the shadows of the modern world. In an age of orphan databases, anonymous adoptions, and fragmented families, there was no longer a need for temples or sanctuaries. There was no longer a need to build houses for rites. You only needed to raise the right child. And then, wait, when everything is gathered, the documents, the diaries, the symbols, the deaths, what emerges can only be described as a legacy without form. The Denver family left no manifesto, no doctrine, no clear religion. Their essence survives in fragments, in symbols, in implications, in photographs with faces scratched out, in houses without windows, in rituals where no words are allowed. They hid too much, and it seems they didn't do it out of fear of exposure, but because they understood something, because they knew that knowledge is an anchor, and those who stare too long into their past risk becoming part of it. This is not a metaphor. Since our first publication on the Denver family, we have received 7 letters, all from unrelated people living in different states, none of whom had heard of the Denvers before our report. Each one describes the same experiences: dreams of an attic with a rocking chair, a sensation of sand underfoot on bare concrete, a voice whispering just behind them, "You were here, always." These were not just stories. One of the letters came from a mathematics professor in St. Louis. After weeks of insomnia and anxiety following his deep dive into the case, he was examined by a doctor. On the inside of his cheek, a tooth was found growing, inward. No dental test could determine its source. The man had never noticed anything unusual until he started researching the Denvers. Coincidence? Maybe. But this is a family that vanished from the world without a single confirmed descendant. This is a family whose children wrote not of actions, but of influences, of rooms that changed shape, of feelings inherited like heirlooms, of places that disappeared from maps as if they'd never been there. And we are speaking of a ritual, one that was meant to end in sacrifice, but never did. On one of the last recovered artifacts, a stone tablet, likely stolen from a burial site in the 1920s, there is a carved inscription. The language is English, but in a strange, archaic form. "Let the weight of memory fall where it may. The vessel must carry all, or all shall fall. The Denver family is gone, but memory is not." And if they truly were trying to preserve something, if their rituals were not acts of madness, but attempts to contain something, then the central question remains unanswered. What happens if the vessel is broken? Or worse, what if it already is? We've told you everything we could find about the Denver family, the symbols, the sites, the names, the bloodlines. More questions than answers. But maybe, in the end, answers aren't what we're meant to find. There are dozens of blank spots on U.S. maps, places that look like nothing. No cities, no rivers, no landmarks, just space, just emptiness. But in Lincoln County, Nevada, there's one such spot that cartographers keep trying to blur out. Because even if you draw nothing there, someone will still go looking. Locals call it the Knot. Geographically, it's an empty space, about 30 kilometers off Highway 93. But if you turn off the main road and follow the dirt track after a few miles, things begin to change. The ground beneath your feet becomes paved. Old pavement, cracked, faded, scarred with tire marks, as if someone drove through just days ago. But the map still shows nothing. And it's not just one road. There are 47 of them. Each one starts in a different spot. Each leads to the same destination. You won't find it on Google Maps, not on OpenStreetMap, not in any land registry. But in the old archives of Lincoln County, it's listed as Parcel 47A. That's where the house stands. 2 stories. Wooden. Faded siding. A heavy overhanging attic. A house that, officially, was never built. And that's only the beginning. In 1961, according to church records, a family moved into the house. The Hoffmans. A mother, a father, and 2 children. No criminal records. No signs of cult activity. Neighbors, those few who lived near the area, said nothing seemed wrong. But one day, the family was gone. Vanished. No signs of struggle. No bodies. No furniture. Just a meal still on the table. And a radio, stuck on a frequency filled with white noise. That alone would be strange. But there's something worse. No one knew them. No school files. No driver's licenses. No one in Nevada, or anywhere, could confirm the Hoffmans ever existed. Photos found in the house showed the family. But the backs weren't labeled with names. They were marked with math equations. No dates, no writing, just numbers. Later, in the basement, someone found a box. Inside, an 8mm film reel. It showed a man and a woman, faces obscured, drawing something on the floor. In the background, you can hear distant train horns, even though the nearest railroad is 50 miles away. A voice on the tape, distorted, repeats a single phrase. "They are not in the house. They are the road." After that, people started avoiding Parcel 47A. The roads leading there changed, visibly, year by year. Pavement appeared where there was none. GPS stopped working. Car odometers recorded miles that were never traveled. Some tried to count the roads. No matter how they started, there were always 47, and all of them led to the same place. And that place was calling. When you begin searching for information about the house at the end of the 47 roads, you encounter a strange paradox. The deeper you dig, the less there is to find. I filed a request with Nevada's Bureau of Structural Records, including coordinates for what's known as Parcel 47A. 3 weeks later, I got a formal reply. No such structure exists. This land has never been registered as private property. That would be the end of the story, if not for one thing. A satellite image taken by a private mapping company in 1998 clearly shows the house. It's there, standing, casting a shadow, its windows reflecting light. There's even a car parked along one of the roads leading to it. This was captured independently, yet in state records from the same year, there's nothing. As if the image was erased, or never archived at all. Later, I was contacted by a man who introduced himself as Michael Graves. He claimed that in 1983, his brother and a group of friends went searching for the place where the Hoffman family supposedly vanished. Only one of them returned, and he never spoke again. Not a word. He was eventually moved to a private clinic in Colorado, where he still lives. In complete silence. Weeks after our conversation, Graves sent me a strange photo. It showed a narrow corridor, shot from the floor. The walls were wooden, cracked, aged. The doors had no handles, and at the far end was a mirror. But the reflection wasn't of the hallway. It showed something else. It was faint, almost unreadable. But zoomed in, the reflection revealed a forest. And beyond the trees, the shape of a house that wasn't visible in the actual photo. Experts confirmed. The image was authentic, no editing. But no one could explain how such a reflection was even possible. I reached out to historians, local journalists, former cartographers. Most didn't respond. A few did, but only to say, "Leave it alone." One person mailed my request back, covered in red ink. Across the top, he'd written, "It's not a house, it's a mechanism." Eventually, I got access to the county archives. Among burned files and discarded notes, I found a page from a journal. No name, no date. Just one final line. Each road isn't a path to the house. It's part of it. The house lives inside them. It feeds on direction. That was the first suggestion that the house might not be a house at all. That it was never meant to be a structure. That maybe the Hoffman family didn't just disappear. Maybe they became part of something that had been growing out there for a very long time. Before Parcel 47A became a whisper, before it was marked by silence and missing names, it was just dust. A barren stretch between dead ravine and an unnamed plateau. Marked on 1860s maps only as Zone of Unstable Ground. No farms, no roads, no people. Until 1872. That year, the first road was built, Road Number 1, and it had a purpose. According to a single county document, it led to a house registered as a temporary medical facility. The owner? Dr. Algernon Vale, a private physician from Massachusetts, who, for reasons unknown, relocated to Nevada. But here's the strange part. No official record of the house, no blueprints, no photos, no signature from Vale himself. Just stories, letters, and rumors. The house was built in 3 days. Patients never left. At night, it made a sound, like chains dragging through the walls. The first documented incident happened just weeks later. Surveyor Henry Talbot and his team were mapping the road. They were expected to finish in a week. But on the 6th day, one of his assistants came back alone, barefoot, covered in shallow cuts, completely silent. A month later, he was found dead in his hotel. Above the bed, scratched into the wall, was a single line. I couldn't close the door. It was inside me. After that, locals stopped calling it Road Number 1. They called it the Bloodline. Attempts to block it off failed. Fences burned overnight. Gravel laid across the path vanished by morning. And then something even stranger. Every map between 1873 and 1900 shows Road Number 1 in a slightly different place. Shifted, tilted, moved, as if the road itself refused to stay still. One year it veers left, another year to the right, but always pointing to the same place. I found one photograph, taken in 1884, by a road technician named John Weston. It shows a dirt road cutting through empty land. But zoom in, and you'll see something odd. Wooden signs along the road, all marked with the same symbol, a circle, and 7 lines stretching outward. That symbol has never been seen anywhere else in Nevada's history. No tribe, no family crest, no known meaning. The last known sighting of Dr. Vale happened in 1876. A witness claimed he stood at the entrance to the house, wearing a long black coat, his back turned to the road, and behind him, a building that shouldn't exist. Too tall, the witness said. The roof disappeared into the sky, and then it was gone. The house, the doctor, all of it. But the road stayed. Then came Road 2, then Road 3, then Road 4, until eventually there were 47. Each one still pointing to something. Something that refuses to be erased. Something that feeds on direction. In the Yuma County archives, between faded blueprints and court case fragments, there's a thin, almost crumbling dossier. On the cover, only a number. 13. No name. No date. Just 13. Inside is a project. One that, according to the scribbled notes, should have never been built. Road Number 13 first appeared in planning documents in 1901. Its creator was listed as Harvey Burton, an engineer from the Boston Polytechnic Institute, assigned west as part of a federal infrastructure expansion. His task? Connect logging settlements scattered across the plateau to the nearest transport hubs. He was given the land between roads 12 and 14, an empty stretch the locals called the Ash Plain. Burton's first journal entries are disturbing. No schematics, no measurements, just lines like, "They're already here. Every evening I hear their footsteps in the dry grass. Even the sand tries to hide. The ground itself is afraid." At first, people dismissed this as stress, isolation, maybe fever. But then, contractors started quitting, one by one. Out of 38 men who began work, only 7 remained. The rest? Gone. No explanation. Or later diagnosed, with sudden and complete mental collapse. And yet somehow, Road 13 was finished in just 19 days. No records of supply routes, no logbooks for gravel, timber, or tar. No witness accounts of vehicles arriving. It was just there, laid out across the desert. Solid. Paved. Real. A small newspaper clipping from that year mentions Burton being seen stumbling out of the desert, barefoot, hands covered in dried blood. He was admitted to a private clinic, silent, staring. When finally questioned, he only whispered one thing. "I didn't build it. I just showed it where to lie down." 3 days later, he vanished. No break-in, no footprints. His room locked from the inside, bed untouched, clothes folded. No sign that anyone had ever stayed there. But the story doesn't end there. In 1927, 26 years later, a man was detained near the southern edge of Yuma. He was wearing dust-covered clothes from another century. He didn't speak at all. But in his pocket, a compass that crumbled to dust when touched, and a torn note that read, "You can't leave until you place the last one." Fingerprints were taken. Matched. Perfectly. To Harvey Burton. No signs of aging. Same man. Within 24 hours, he vanished again, this time from a locked holding cell. Security footage? Just static. No sound. No movement. Only white noise. Since then, Road 13 is marked as closed. Barriers are up. Official maps listed as inactive. But satellite images still show it. Long, winding, cutting through the ash plain like a scar. And sometimes there are vehicles on it. One, maybe two each month. They drive in and never come back out. I tried tracing one of the license plates, an SUV registered in Idaho. According to state records, it was scrapped. In 1993. So how did it end up on a road that shouldn't exist in 2023? Road number 27 officially doesn't exist. It's missing from topographic maps, archival blueprints, and federal transportation records. Yet since the 1960s, it appears regularly in aerial photographs, every time in a different location. In 1963, private pilots flying over Montana reported an unexplained gray streak cutting through a protected valley where, according to all records, no construction had taken place. Weeks later, the streak vanished, leaving behind only a scorched strip of earth. In 1978, authorities in Sandoval County, New Mexico, documented an emergency landing of a small plane. The pilot claimed he had been flying along a route that didn't exist on any map. Radio recordings from the incident capture him whispering, "I see the signs." 27. They change direction as I fly. This road, it's alive. What's especially chilling, all images of Road 27 from different decades share one feature. Its endpoint leads to a location where, in 1889, stood a house. The so-called House at the 47 Roads. No other address repeats. This house appeared in newspapers in the late 19th century. They wrote about a couple, the Rowans, settlers, who built an estate at a crossroads. But later, across states and years, the house seemed to reappear, with the same name and the same appearance. Children in Mississippi drew it in 1932. A trucker in Utah described it in 1991. A photo of it was found on an abandoned tourist camera in Arizona, 2007. Studies of GPS signals from devices lost near Road 27 sightings revealed a strange pattern. Right before disappearing, all signals made a sudden leap, jumping hundreds of kilometers in milliseconds, then stopped forever. Some researchers believe Road 27 isn't a physical thing. They say it's a shifting anomaly, a route that doesn't lead somewhere, but pulls you in. Data suggests this road isn't built. It activates. And each time, closer to the house at the 47 Roads, there is one more detail, rarely mentioned. In every photo of Road 27, even the oldest, a figure stands at the roadside, human-shaped, black, elongated. It never moves, never turns. But the angle of its shadow always points toward the Rowan house. In the archives of Buchanan County, Missouri, there is a single detailed record about a house referred to in the protocols as Object Number 47R. The document is dated 1894 and contains a report by Sheriff Lemuel Hawkins, a man whose name appears nowhere else except in this file. His report begins simply, "The house is not old. It looks as if it was just built, but the wood inside is already rotten." Hawkins arrived after a series of strange disappearances in the border area between Missouri and Kansas. Several farm residents claimed they heard the sound of a train at night, although there were no railways in the area. Later, someone spotted lights in the woods, and in the morning, footprints of children leading nowhere. Within a week, 3 children vanished. The last was 10-year-old Lily Martin, who went searching for her brother and never returned. When the sheriff and 2 deputies found the house, it stood right at the crossing of 47 forest trails. That number, Hawkins wrote, was carved into every door inside. The house seemed empty, but inside, the temperature was below freezing. In the middle of July. The floors creaked, though no one moved. There were no paintings on the walls, only numbers scratched with fingernails. Each room had a different number. As later investigation showed, those numbers matched missing persons case files from the county's last 70 years. Some of the numbers corresponded to disappearances that had not yet happened. In the attic, Hawkins found a sealed hatch. Next to it lay a wooden doll, styled like a priest. Its face was coated in wax, and on its chest, a brass plaque was engraved with the phrase, "Where there is no exit, the path arrives." Deciding to open the hatch, Hawkins and his deputies discovered a basement deeper than the house's structure should allow. Its walls were not made of stone, but of rough marble, covered with inscriptions in an unknown language. Beneath was a well, and inside it, a staircase leading even deeper. There are no records in the report about what they found below. The text ends abruptly, and the last line, written in uneven handwriting, reads, "They did not die. They simply stepped aside." 3 days later, all 3 men, the sheriff and his deputies, were found 200 miles away, barefoot, in a state of complete amnesia. One of them later took his own life, scratching the number 27 into the floor of his cell. The house disappeared a week later. In its place remained an oval depression where machinery failed and radio signals cut out. Geologists recorded a drop in electromagnetic background radiation similar to what occurs near lightning strikes. And there was something else. On one of the stone slabs found in the soil, an emblem was carved, resembling a cult symbol, an eye with intersecting roads, the same symbol that was later spotted in other disappearing settlements. It was then that the hypothesis first emerged. The house at the 47 roads is not a building. It is a manifestation, a temporary physical form of some mechanism connected to moving or removing people from reality. And road number 27, leading to it, is a kind of hook that pulls in those caught on the line. But where does this line lead? To answer, researchers tried tracing the geometry of all recorded appearances of Road 27 over the last 100 years. The result was unexpected. The points formed a spiral, the center of which was not in Missouri nor Montana, but in the heart of a dead town in Nebraska, a town that officially has the record anywhere. The first recorded appearance of road number 27 dates back to 1861, almost 30 years before the events in Missouri. At that time, it wasn't yet called by that name. It was mentioned simply as a dusty trail through a ravine, but in the diaries and complaints of local residents, it consistently appeared with one strange detail. All sound vanished along it. Footsteps, birdsong, even the wind. Everything fell silent the moment someone stepped onto the path. Back then, in Richardson County, Nebraska, lived a settler family, Jonas and Everly March and their 4 children. They ran an ordinary farm, blending in with the other settlers, until the day a pastor from a neighboring village arrived. He was searching for his parishioners, the Little family, who had disappeared 2 days earlier after taking a walk along the northern slope, where that very road passed. According to the pastor, the March family was strangely calm. Jonas insisted he had never seen the Littles, but in the fireplace they found charred scraps of clothing matching descriptions of the missing family. Though this was not proof, the pastor grew suspicious and notified the county authorities. When the officials arrived to search the farm, it was already deserted. The March house stood wide open. Inside, there was no sign of struggle, No bodies. Only ash stains arranged in a spiral pattern, and a large black doll sitting on the bed in the children's room. Its face was coated with lacquer, and on its chest hung a wooden plaque that read, "Route number 97 begins here." It would later become known that such dolls had been found in other anomalous locations, always appearing before or after people vanished. Federal officials tried to erase the March case from public archives, citing it as a family tragedy and false accusations. However, a year later, one investigator, a young surveyor named Garrett Strong, secretly copied his observations and passed them to a private archive. He claimed the March house had an unusual architecture, with 9 corners and a foundation made of stone not found in the region. He also discovered a basement that, according to the plans, should not have existed. Strong wrote, "It wasn't a house, but a mechanism. Its walls did not protect from the outside world. They contained what was inside." I believe Jonas March was not an architect. He was a guardian. The March family's trail goes cold after that. They were never found in other states or settler registries. No descendants have ever been discovered. The only trace left behind was the spiral pattern and the number 27, burned into the back wall of a barn that locals set on fire in 1863. This very spot would later become the center of the geometric spiral connecting all the appearances of the house at the 47 roads. Coincidence? Or a deliberate point of origin? But if the Marches were truly the first to build such a dwelling, another question arises. How did they know how? The answer might be hidden in a book they found, the only one to survive the fire. A book bound in leather, with no title, filled with texts written in an unknown alphabet. A book later seen by another man, Professor Mercer, which led to his disappearance in 1911. In January 1910, nearly half a century after the disappearance of the March family, Professor Charles Mercer, a linguist and comparative mythology expert, received an unusual artifact as a gift. He did not know exactly where the scroll had come from. The accompanying letter contained only, "You study ancient languages. This one is older than all. Do not attempt to read it aloud." The letter was unsigned, and the sender's address was absent. But the contents, a small leather-bound book with faded symbols on the cover, astonished the professor. He devoted the next 15 months of his life to it, at first out of academic interest, then obsessively. Mercer made dozens of copies of the symbols, comparing them to Sumerian, Etruscan, even Maya petroglyphs. But the language resisted all attempts at decipherment. However, in February 1911, he announced to his students that he had finally found the logic. After that, something strange began. Colleagues noted that Mercer started talking to himself. He spent nights in his office, where metallic sounds, like someone scratching the floor or walls, were increasingly heard. One student, visiting him one evening, claimed the room smelled sharply of soot and chalk, and the books on the shelves were arranged in the shape of an 8-pointed star. In the center lay that very book. A week later, the professor disappeared. His apartment was found open, and in the bedroom, a pentagram was carved directly into the parquet floor. At its center stood a small box made of the same material as the book's cover. Inside was a spiral carved into the underside of the lid. The book was gone. The only remaining evidence was a note written on the back of a page from a university journal. It contained just 3 sentences. "They are not dead. They are simply not here. The house is not a place, but a consent." This note later came into the hands of Jane Sullivan, a specialist in religious cults, who noticed the phrasing matched records of a Masonic order in New Orleans in the 1850s. But more on that later. The most important fact: Mercer's disappearance coincided with a sudden fire at the university archive, where his drafts, notes, and photocopies of the book were stored. The fire destroyed everything, except one page, accidentally left with his assistant. On it was a diagram resembling a plan, not of a building, but a sequence of actions, steps, circles, phrases, as if someone was trying to construct a ritual. At the center of the page was a familiar symbol, 47, with a bold dot beneath the number, and below it, the phrase, "The beginning has no address. It comes when you open the door." Mercer was never found. But 6 months after his disappearance, a campus security guard claimed to have seen a man dressed in black walking across the university grounds, carrying a doll, an exact replica of the one once found in the March House. No cameras recorded anything, but a strange, burnt, straight mark, like a knife's cut, remained on the stone pathway. The story of the nameless book remained a closed case, but it is believed by some that this book was the origin of an informal community later called the Loop. People obsessed with symbols, disappearing roads, and the phenomenon of 47. In September 1928, an event occurred in Emery County, Utah, which was never officially reported in any newspaper. 3 highway patrol officers, Thomas Mason, Howard Randall, and James Caldwell, were dispatched to investigate a mysterious structure that, according to local farmers, had not existed a week prior. It appeared at the intersection of Route 27 and an old dirt road leading to an abandoned tunnel. The building looked like a 2-story house with columns and a tiled roof. Its walls had a strange color, gray-green like faded bronze. The strangest thing was that inside, compasses did not work. This was the first recorded incident where geomagnetic instruments failed to function. Vehicle instruments showed the compass needle spinning in circles, as if the car were standing on a pole. The patrol entered the building at 3:14 p.m. Communications were lost immediately. The radio captured only background noise, resembling a voice distorted by water. 4 hours later, only one man returned, James Caldwell. He was found sitting on the roadside, in shock, with his hands tightly pressed to his ears, as if trying to block out some sound. He did not speak for nearly 2 days. When he finally did, he wrote only one word: voices. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with acute shock caused by isolation or a traumatic episode. But no trace of Mason or Randall was ever found. The house they had entered had disappeared, leaving only a perfectly burned circle in the dry earth, 22 meters in diameter. The soil inside this circle had turned glassy, like after a lightning strike. Later, investigators described the interior layout of the house as logically impossible. Rooms flowed into each other without doors. Some staircases led upward, but returned downward, and windows did not look outside but into other rooms. The floor, ceiling, and walls swapped places. The entire structure was closed in on itself, as if built not by the laws of physics, but by the rules of a kaleidoscope. On one section of the wall, the patrol noticed an indented symbol. It was the number 47, stretched vertically like a column and enclosed within an octagon. None of the officers knew what it meant. Later, architectural experts noted that the building's layout matched a symbolic blueprint found in Masonic archives in Baltimore, dated 1789. The blueprint included a notation: "The house that will not let out those who have spoken with it." James Caldwell, the sole survivor, disappeared 7 months after the incident. His disappearance was equally strange. He vanished directly from a clinic room in Seattle. No cameras recorded any movement, but in the corner of his room was a chalk-drawn 8-pointed star, exactly like the one in Professor Mercer's notes. From that moment on, police ceased sending personnel to that part of the county. The area was officially closed, and the highway was rerouted. Locals still avoid the spot to this day, calling it the ring that forgets you. Over the past 3 months, we have studied dozens of documents, testimonies, and fragments of memory related to the house on 47 Roads. We trace the chain from the disappearance of the March family to Patrolman Caldwell, from Mercer's diary to the Masonic Hall's blueprint. All these points now connect into a disturbing system, coherent, yet monstrous in meaning. What if the house is not unique? What if it is just one projection of a larger mechanism? A structure based on geometry, language, and human perception. What we called an anomaly is not a malfunction. It is a function. We found 3 recorded cases of similar buildings. In 1846, a mansion in Georgia that vanished from maps after a sudden flood. In 1892, a hotel in Illinois where 17 people disappeared without a trace in one night. The sole survivor said, "The room had no walls." In 1907, a chapel in Colorado, rebuilt by monks according to a voice heard in their dreams. None survived. In all cases, one symbol repeats, the 8-pointed star, often combined with the number 47 or its multiples. Comparing Mercer's records with a fresco reconstruction from the March house revealed another pattern. The room layout in the house perfectly matches the sequence of a formal magical diagram from early Rosicrucian times. This means these structures were designed not by humans, but according to the law of spiritual model construction. Who is the author? Hatcher, before his death, in one of his last notes, referred to a manuscript presumably found in North Carolina. Its author is unknown. But it says, there are 9 geometries. The first, earth. The second, blood. The third, order. Beyond the 9th begins the exit. Only he who enters the 8th door will understand why the houses were built. This concept, the 9 geometries, also appears in the records of the sect, the Repository of Speech, active in early 19th century Tennessee. Their idea was that speech is not a means of communication, but a mechanism for activating space. Silent houses, houses where no one spoke, became pure, and true geometry manifested inside them. The March family were probably part of this sect, or its descendants. Their house was built exactly according to ancient schemes. But who completed the cycle remains unknown. Some researchers suggest the house on 47 Roads is not a place, but a tool. It does not capture people. It sorts them, as if the house itself chooses whom it is ready to show the 8th door and whom to erase. The last fragment found in the ruins of the former house was a plaque with the inscription, "Do not try to leave. If you are here, you are already inside." The story is over. But if you look broader, everything is just beginning. Because in the U.S., there are over 300 registered disappearances matching the pattern of non-localized structures. And almost every case involves one of the same symbols, a star, a number, or the phrase, "he spoke, then fell silent."